Hey everyone, welcome to the channel or welcome back to the channel. If it's not your first time here, really appreciate you coming back and watching some more of my videos. Hey, today I wanted to do another video on the Tab XC. This time I wanted to answer the top 20 questions that you've been posing in the comments over the last 10 or 11, whatever videos I posted for the Tab XC. If you get a chance and you got a lot of questions about it, go back and check out those videos. There's a lot of good information in there. So I will start off by saying that I approach when I give you information about a device, I approach this from a user, just like myself. I'm not a professional reviewer. I'm a user, and I wanted to give you my use case and what my feelings are towards the device. And I'm not one that dives into the specs. I'm not one that has any rigorous testing procedures. There are a lot of good YouTube channels that do that, and they're eventually going to come out with some good videos on the Tab XC. But in the interim, I just wanted to give you my thoughts. So I'm going to divide these into three different categories. It seems like the questions fell into one of these three. So the first one is going to be the Tab XC versus the Note Max, and it's not a direct feature for feature comparison. What it is there's some questions about, well, how does this compare to that, so on and so forth. And then the second one is going to be the Tab XC compared to the Note Air 4C, and kind of the same things, or what are my thoughts and opinions on certain things that are in common between those or in contrast between those. And then last, it's going to be just general questions about the Tab XC overall, and I'll try to answer those for you as well. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So the first section will be the Tab XC as compared to the Note Max, two 13.3 inches devices by Boox. One is a monochrome Carta 1300, while the other is a Kaleido 3. It's a glass screen. Certainly, it's got color. It's got front light, where the Note Max does not have that. So the first question that I wanted to bring up, there were actually a couple of questions that had to do with ghosting and what does the ghosting look like during web browsing? So let's dig into that real quick. All right, so to start off, we're going to start off on the same website, cnn.com. I'm using the Chrome browser on each one of them. We're going to go ahead and do a full refresh on both screens. And then to see what our settings are, we're in A2. I've got high contrast off. Um, Over here, it looks like I've got custom with the dark color enhancement is about a little bit higher than that. Let me bump that back down a little bit. Also take vivid enhancement back down. And let's just see what we have. All right, I'm going to start scrolling the website. Let me get them in the same spot here. So I do have, it looks like when I'm scrolling on the Tab XC, I am seeing a little bit of ghosting back here already. I also have a little bit on the Note Max. Try to keep them in sync here. I do see some ghosting on the podium here on the Tab XC. I really don't see any on the Note Max yet, which is shocking because one thing that I would tell you just anecdotally from my experience on both of these devices is that I don't notice ghosting on the Tab XC hardly at all. Where on the Note Max I do, but that's not the experience that we're getting here through web browsing. But I have never made any kind of a comparison with web browsing. So this is interesting. I can see as I'm scrolling here, I've got a band. Looks like it BSR took care of that. Let's just go into one of these. As I switched here, I've got some ghosting about the middle of his nose in a straight line. I can still see some of the text here. The the Note Max is actually doing better from a web browsing standpoint, which I'll say that is shocking to me. That has not been my experience. So very interesting. As I move back to this, you can also, hopefully you can see the ghosting that's up here. And I don't see that on the Note Max. That is counter to my experience in any other apps that I look at or use on a regular basis. For example, let me do my Bible study app. Let's just do a full refresh here on both devices and then do some scrolling. And I am seeing some lines on the Note Max. You can see where the lines of text were in the middle of the screen where it's blank. I don't see that here at all. There's no ghosting on the Tab XC at all, where I see that somewhat prominently on the Note Max. And that's kind of my experience between the two is that this is very minimal ghosting. Let me hit refresh. That completely took care of that. See if it comes back again. It is back again. So it's interesting. So web browsing, at least in that one experiment there, was that it is not as good on the Tab XC as it is on the Note Max. Let me go to a website like Amazon and just see if see what I get there. And I'm using the Gboard keyboard, so I use swipe on there. All right, let's just do some scrolling here. No, it's interesting. I don't get the kind of ghosting that I got on the CNN website. Both devices are doing really good with no ghosting here. Let's type on get to know us careers. I think I'll get a job at Amazon. Let's see. I have calluses on the end of my fingers because I play guitar. So when I touch things with my left hand, sometimes the calluses are not accepted as input. Here I don't see ghosting on either device. Well, I'm sorry, I do. I see it on the tab, I mean, on the Note Max over here. I can still see images that were on the screen previously. Where on the Note, or I'm sorry, on the Tab XC, I don't see that at all. So, with the exception of that one website that we went to, um, as has been my experience off camera, ghosting on this, the Tab XC is extremely minimal. Very good job on eliminating ghosting. Where there still is that issue on the Note Max. It's not horrible on the Note Max. And I keep, I use the navigation buttons in the bottom, so I've got the full refresh button here, but I've also got it slide in from the left side. I think I've got it set up that way. It's a full refresh. I do that on both of the devices. The second question had to do with battery life comparison between the two. So I did a video previously, not really I called it not a scientific battery test. I just did a drain over the course of an hour playing the same YouTube video on both devices. In that particular comparison, the Tab XC did better. The drain was not as much. Since then, I've done some additional things. I've installed an app. I think it's called AccuBattery, but it measures battery performance and battery drain. And I found that both devices so far, I really haven't used it long enough to get enough history to be able to share this with you and make it any kind of I guess a scientific comparison, but I found that the battery drain is very similar. Now, here's what I do. I told you that everything I do is from me as a user and how I use the device, not necessarily as a reviewer, if you will. So my use case is going to be if I've got a device that's got color and a front light, I'm probably going to use the front light. And on the Tab XC, I do use the front light at about 70%. Of course, the Note Max does not have a front light, but when I do any kind of a comparison, I compare those not front light off to no front light, which would make sense, would be the best way, but that's not the way that I use the device. So I'm comparing it for how I use it. You may or may not find that helpful. I can tell you that there are some other reviewers like Jeffrey Moss and Voya from My Deep Guide that I'm sure that will eventually come out with some very detailed testing to include the battery life, and look out for those. You'll get a very good sense of what that is from a scientific point of view. But here's my thoughts so far. So I mentioned the app AccuBattery. Certainly have not been using the app itself long enough. Actually, it has not been through a charging cycle yet, so this is certainly not a very good comparison, or at least a detailed comparison. But I did install the app on the Tab XC first, and then 3 or 4 minutes later, I installed it on the Note Max. So there is a little bit of a time discrepancy of just a few minutes. But I began to do testing on these two, meaning that I would open different apps. I would do everything, but everything that I did on both devices equally. If I wrote, I would write on one and then I'd write on the other the exact same thing. Um, I had the same background apps running. So I tried to make everything as similar as possible so that I could get results and see what they would look like. So I also let them go to sleep for a while, and they've been sleeping up until the time that I've been making this video today. So I did notice, and I do have the front light on the Tab XC, like I said. I do notice that now my Tab XC is down to 81%, and more specifically in here it says that the battery. So there's three different icons here. This battery says with mixed use, screen on, screen off, normal usage. You can expect from this point forward about 14 hours and 34 minutes. If I had the screen on the entire time, it would be 5 hours, 23 minutes. If the screen off, I'm sorry, if the screen was off the entire time, it would be 19 hours, 26 minutes. So how does that compare? So it says 1434 in mixed use. Over here it shows 15.7, so a little bit longer time estimate on the Note Max. Uh, with screen on 100% of the time from here on until the battery dies, I could expect 5 hours, 23 minutes here. Here it's saying 5 hours and 44 minutes. And then if I had the screen off the entire time, here it's saying 19 hours, 26 minutes. Over here it says 20 hours and 9 minutes. So it is estimating that the battery life is going to be longer on the Note Max, which is, to be expected, especially in my use case. Now, if you turn off your front light, if that's the way that you prefer to use it, I'm sure that you'll get similar results. You may even get better results over here because it does have a 5500 milliamp battery versus a 3700 milliamp battery on the Note Max. So without that front light, um, you may get even better results than what we're showing here. So unscientific test, but just thought I'd share that. So the next question in the Tab XC versus Note Max has to do with eye strain. Is it better on one device or the other? Does the front light and the colors affect the eye strain from the Tab XC? So let's take a look at that question real quick. So when looking at eye strain, I wanted to start off with both devices in a similar state, and that's without a front light on. So this is the Tab XC with no front light, and of course the Note Max. The Tab XC, as you can see, you should already know that a Kaleido 3 screen with no front light is going to be a darker screen, but it's still a usable screen. And I mentioned in a previous video, I'm in my home office, and the lighting in my home office, I haven't figured out the studio lighting stuff yet. So I don't have optimal lighting down here. This is kind of like lighting that you would see in a typical home office. So I think that this is usable. For me, it's not the greatest, and that's why I use the front light. But when I'm in my work office, in my full-time job, I use it in this state, and it is certainly very easy to read with no front light in that environment. So from an eye strain standpoint, you can use either of these. Where you have proper lighting and have absolutely no eye strain at all. Now, with the Tab XC, it does have the benefit of the front light, and I'll just put it at about 50% because on the camera, it looks a lot brighter than what it actually is to the eyes. So I've got it about 50% here. I'm looking at my screen or my camera screen right now. It looks brighter there than it does here. This is a very good mellow to me, uh, saturation of light. and it's very easy on the eyes. And my theory, or at least the way that I think of front light versus backlight, is like on an iPad, the light is coming through the screen and up to your eyes. And it can be very harsh, just like a computer screen. It's basically you've got that shining directly into your eyes. With a front light, it's shining onto the screen and reflecting back. So just by the nature of how this works, you're not going to have the harsh light that you do with like an LED or an OLED screen. So I think eye strain, you're not going to have an issue with eye strain on either device. All right, the next one, I had several questions just around which one's better for general use, reading, writing, browsing, those types of things. What you might typically use the device for, productivity, those types of things. So I'll give you my thoughts on that. So just general use, and I can only talk about my use case. So I use it at work mostly, but I also use these devices for journaling, for just browsing the web and those types of things. And I would say that the experience is very very similar. Under the hood, the system on a chip that's driving both of these are the same, I believe. And so the speed, I've tried to do speed test off camera. There's really not a difference between these two. There is a little bit of a difference between the Tab XC and the Note Air 4C, but it's not significant. But from just general, like I use Outlook, I use Teams, I use my personal email, Microsoft To Do. I take notes a lot. I read a lot. I browse, news sites. I do some light YouTube watching on this. And when I say YouTube watching, I mostly watch tech videos, sort of like what I do here. So, I'm watching all that kind of stuff as well. And both devices do really well. So, with the exception of note taking, I'm going to say that the Tab XC for me has the upper hand only because I enjoy the front light. I enjoy the colors. It gives me more of a, I guess, a immersion into whatever I'm doing, especially if I'm browsing or reading news or watching YouTube videos or whatever the case may be. I think it's a better experience on a color screen. However, for writing, definitely would give um, uh, the kudos to the Note Max because of the writing feel on the screen here. It's much better than the naked writing feel on this screen over here. I've documented many times I use a screen protector on this thing. You go back and look at some videos. I'll also talk about it in some questions coming up here in just a few minutes. But just from the native writing feel, this is going to win hands down. This is a very slippery experience here, but overall, I think if I had to give the nod to either device for general use, it's got to be the Tab XC for me. Your mileage may vary. All right, the next questions have to do with the trade-offs between the two devices and, are they worth it, to consider one over the other given those limitations or features. For example, on the Boox Note Max, there's no front light, there's no color, but there's an absolutely stunning black and white e-ink screen. Um, Whereas you get the color and you get the front light on the Tab XC, but the screen is not quite the level as far as the crispness. It is a very crisp screen, don't get me wrong. The Tab XC is a very, very, very good screen. But not quite as good as the Note Max, but you don't get colors, you don't get a front light. So is that worth the trade-off? Also, the writing feel on the Note Max is much superior to the writing feel in the Tab XC with just a bare screen. Now, if you've watched any of my previous videos before, you'll see that I'm using an iPad screen protector by Bersem, Bersem. I'm not, they're not sponsoring the video. I don't get any kind of a kickback on it. I don't have any affiliate links or anything like that. I just love the Bursum screen protector for the Tab XC. It's not scratchy. It doesn't have a sandpaper feel. It's just got a very smooth matte feel to it, and I love writing on it. And in my opinion, it makes the writing experience better than the Note Max. So let's dig into that. So I think the genesis of this question is which one should I buy? I think that's what this question is. But most of the people that have posed this in one form or another have been looking for direction. I'm trying to decide between the Tab XC and the Note Max. Help me decide. So it really does come down to, do you want a front light and color so you can use the device anywhere, anytime, doesn't matter the lighting condition? It has to be the Tab XC. Do you want the best, crispest screen where it looks like all of these icons, all of your handwriting almost looks like it's on top of the glass? You got to go with the Note Max, but you lose the color in the front light. But then the other question that you've got to ask and consider between those is the writing feel. So do you want the absolute best writing feel? It's going to be the Note Max, hands down. The next question is kind of related to that. Somebody asked, does the screen on the Tab XC look less flat? And the way that I interpreted that was, when you look at the Boox Note Max, it almost looks like the e-ink is on top of the glass, or the screen, on the outside of the screen. It's that good. There's very few layers between the e-ink and the experience, or the top layer of the device, and it really gives you a fantastic experience. So the question is what is the experience like on the Tab XC? Does it give you that? How flat does it look? Well, there's a gap. It's got a front light in there, so there's a gap, and you could see the gap. And when I put my pen to the screen, the gap is almost not noticeable in the Note Max, but you can see a little bit of a gap on the Tab XC. It's not much, but let me also emphasize that it does not degrade the experience at all. It's just a minor difference between the two. The last question of comparison is the writing feel between the two devices. So let's talk about it, just bare devices. They come shipped out of the box from Boox. The Tab XC is a very smooth, glassy, slippery feel to it. When you use the Inkspire stylus, if you do not use the haptic feel, your pen is very slippery on the screen, extremely slippery, as is the palm of my hand when it's going across the screen as well. So control of the writing experience is not very good. When you add the haptic feedback, I like the haptic feedback at about 80% of the way, or 75%. I forgot how maybe it's 80%. It's 4 out of 5, I think. So when you use the haptic feedback, it does mitigate the slippery feel a little bit. It kind of gives you the impression, or the psychological mind trick of that you do have some kind of a textured surface on there. I still find that the writing experience is less optimal than I would want it to be. On the Note Max, you've got that Carta 1300 screen. It's a great screen to write on. I love it. It's got just the right amount of texture. You do get a paper-like writing experience on it's superior to the Tab XC by far. So with all that said, if you've watched any of my previous videos, once again, I'm using an iPad Bursum screen protector on the Tab XC, and that screen protector combined with the Inkspire stylus, because I found some more screen protectors that I've tried that don't feel good with that stylus, especially if it's got a gritty or sandpaper feel. Doesn't feel good with the Inkspire stylus, but the Bursum screen protector feels wonderful. And I really think that the writing experience with that screen protector is better than the experience on the Note Max. All right, so that wraps up the questions about the Tab XC versus the Note Max. So let's move into the Tab XC versus the Note Air 4C and look at the questions there. So I think I said in another video of the Boox devices that I prefer the Note Air 4C, and one of the viewers asked me, do I still prefer the Note Air 4C after getting the Tab XC? And that question is complex, and I'll tell you why. So I have never been a single device person. I always use more than one device. For example, I carry a 13-inch iPad Pro with me to work every day, and I use that in the keyboard case for Teams, for messaging, iMessage, those types of things. I don't usually write on it, so that's why I carry an ink device as well. So if I don't have my iPad with me, I also like to have a device that can function or do the majority of the functionality that the iPad does. For example, all those additional apps, the productivity apps, the Microsoft suite, those types of things. But I generally have my iPad with me. So I like to have another device. For example, right now it's the Tab XC. I'm really loving the Tab XC. I mean, there's a lot to love about this device, and it's really made me consider changing my workflow. And I've been experimenting with that over the last week and a half, and I'll share that probably in another video of how that's impacted my workflow for the positives. Um, but do I still prefer the Note Air 4C? I don't think it's an either or. So I like the fact that I can have the Tab XC in my work environment when I don't mind carrying a 13.3-inch device in that environment. I'm always at a desk or a table, where I can lay that device down. I can handwrite on it without any kind of issue, and it's a really good experience. Now, there's other instances where I don't feel comfortable taking that large of a device. For example, in a previous video, I said that I take notes in church during the service, and that's a large device to carry into that. It's not very inconspicuous, I guess you'd say. So I do carry the Note Air 4C in those particular situations. There's also times when I'm sitting on the couch and I just want to, use an e-ink device, maybe to browse the web, to look at some tech videos on YouTube. I don't watch anything with a lot of action, but I find that it works really well for videos without a lot of motion, which, like this one, there's not a lot of motion in this video. And it really works well for that. So I think the tandem of the Tab XC and the Note Air 4C is a good combination, and it's not an either or. I also have a Go Color 7 Gen 2 on the way that I think would make a great device for, reading in bed or on the beach, or when I want all those documents with me, or at least access to those documents where I don't want to necessarily carry a bigger device. So I think I'm going to have a trio of devices that may fit into my new workflow. So stay tuned for that video. So I had a couple of questions about the writing feel on the Tab XC versus the Note Air 4C. And I think the answer is very similar to the comparison that I made to the Boox Note Max. The Note Air 4C is superior from a writing experience. There's no doubt about that. When you go bare device to bare device, no doubt about the Note Air 4C is better. Um, and I'm not saying that the Tab XC is awful. It's something you can probably get used to and make adjustments to. It's very similar to the writing experience on an iPad with no screen protector on it. However, if you have the option to use a screen protector, one that is not going to chew into your nib, one that's not going to, sandpaper feel, but just give you that very subtle resistance that you don't get on the bare screen, why not use it? I've heard some people say, you're adding another layer to it, and it's unnecessary. But in my particular use case, I don't agree with that. I guess that goes into each his own. So you'd have to make up your own mind as far as whether you'd want to use that or not. Another question that came in comparing the Tab XC to the Note Air 4C is how does it compare? Both of them are the Kaleido 3 screen. So how does it compare with color images? Is there any difference between the two? So let's look at that. All right, so just for reference, I've got both of the devices here. I've got the front light on both set at about 50%, and the warm light, I don't know, probably 10-15% on each one of the devices so that it's similar. I've got both of them set on the high quality mode so that there's very similar as far as what the images would look like. So as you can see on here, it's extremely similar. To me, looking at this real life in person, it's really imperceptible, any kind of a difference between these two images. Let me look at another one just to be safe. I'm going to look at the printer image. And this is simply just a page where colors are shown, and you can see some differences here. It does look like on this particular images that the images are more saturated, especially on this bar here on the Note Air 4C than it is, and also in these blues. It looks like it's a darker blue over here and a lighter blue on this side. So there is a little bit of difference there, and you can see in the some of the other parts of the image, it is a little bit deeper, more saturated colors on the Note Air 4C. So very similar images there. Hard to tell any kind of a difference between those two at all. Also on these images, very difficult to tell a difference. It looks like maybe in the background here, it's a more saturated image. Sorry, I had the menu up at the bottom. Over on this side, it's a little bit more saturated of an image on the Tab XC, but really not much of a difference. And then the last one that I'll look at is just, I picked this one because of the color of the shirt. And as you can see on there, it's very similar. There's not much difference on there at all. So with that said, I would say that both screens are extremely similar. You're not going to, find much of a difference between the two because they're both Kaleido 3 and the latest iteration of Kaleido 3. So I think you're going to get high quality no matter which device you go with. The next question just has to do with general use and the comparison between the two devices. Really, one is a very large screen, one is a more moderate size screen. And what are those general use cases, reading, writing, browsing, productivity type apps? What is the experience like, and what's the difference between those two? So let me share my thoughts on that. So this may be the easiest to answer of all the questions that I've had so far, especially given the previous comparison that I did just a second ago. There's really three differences between these devices. The obvious one is the size. And that's really, do you want something that's more portable, or you do want something that's just got expansive real estate to be able to read and write on? If you're looking at, large PDFs, certainly this device is going to be better for that. Not a bad experience on this one, though, to speak of. The second is that this is a little bit snappier. There's not a huge difference between this. Somebody mentioned a lag. There's some lag in the Note Air 4C. It's a little slower than the Tab XC, but it's not tremendously slow. There's not a user experience. If you didn't use this, you wouldn't be dissatisfied with this one at all. And if you use them, I'm using both of them. I'm still not dissatisfied with this one at all. And then the third thing is just the writing experience. It's going to be better on the Note 8 4C out of the box than the Tab XC. But once again, I highly, highly recommend using the right screen protector on this screen. And for me right now, although it's not designed for this, it's that Bursum iPad 13-inch screen protector that makes the writing experience the best of any device I own, with the exception of the Supernote Manta. I think the Supernote Manta exceeds this, but this would be my favorite non-Supernote device. So really, it just comes down to those three things. Writing feel, are you willing to make the modification? Size, and then a little bit of speed, but not that big of a deal. Okay, the last question in the comparison between the Tab XC and the Note Air 4C has to do with screen brightness. So I'm going to take that question to mean possibly two things. With the screen, or I'm sorry, with the front light off, does it look like there's any difference in the brightness between the two screens? And then with the front light on, and I'll try it a couple of different ways, is there any perceptible difference between the two as far as that goes? So let's look at that. Okay, so here's both devices with the front light completely off. To my naked eye, looking at it here, and then also looking at it on the video screen, it looks like they're very similar, especially here in person. There is not much of a difference at all, um, as you can see from the text. They're both very readable. Got a little ghosting on that one, so let me refresh that here. But they're both very readable, and like I said, my office here in my home is not studio lighting. It's certainly not the level of lighting that I have at work in my full-time job. So, but it's still readable here. I could certainly, use it that way if I wanted to. Now let's just take it to the other extreme, and let's go all the way up in max brightness on both. And it's so bright on both devices, it's washing out the camera. So let's pull this back down to about 50% on both and take a look at it there. Um, I perceive on the, let me hit screen refresh here. I perceive on the Note Max that it's a little bit of a whiter, maybe a bluer background color. And on this one, it's more of a, it's almost got like a little bit of a purple tinge. I don't notice it except for when I'm comparing the two. Outside of that, they both look great. So, all right, so that's the last question in the comparison to the Note Air 4C. The remaining questions have to do just general questions about the Tab XC. So let's dig into those real quick. So this first one was not really a question, it was really a comment. Somebody said that they were turned off by the glass feel of the device. And I can certainly understand why that would be the case. If you've come from another e-ink device that had a paper-like feel to it, and you're moving to this one, maybe you haven't had a Tab Ultra C Pro before or a Tab Mini C that maybe had a similar screen, this would be very disappointing to you. If you've had experience with those other devices, you may be more inclined to accept this one. And I'll go back to say the writing feel is not horrible with a haptic feedback. It's usable. And this is a tablet first and a note-taking device as an kind of an add-on to it. Whereas the other note devices are just the opposite. They're designed for writing, and they just do an outstanding job about that or on that. So being disappointed is certainly, I can understand that. The next question also has to do with the screen and it has to do with, so I'm using a screen protector on the screen. So how do I feel about the clarity of the screen with the protector on there? And also, how do I feel about the glare that I see on the screen as well? Does it reduce any of the glare? So let's look at that. So the experience with a screen protector is going to vary based on what protector that you use. Some of them are going to be, have rougher texture, going to have more of a matte finish that's going to dull the screen behind it. I have used this particular Bursum screen protector on my iPads for a while. I love the feel of it. There is no gritty, scratchy sandpaper feel. It's very smooth and silky, and it really doesn't dull the colors, it doesn't dull the vibrancy of the screen. Especially you take an iPad that's got a double OLED, panel on there. You would think that a screen protector would have the biggest opportunity to dull something like that, and it really doesn't. So you get it on this ink device, and you have less of a vibrant screen. The concern might be that it would make it even more dull or muddy or whatever, and that's certainly not the case at all. And I don't know if you can tell, I don't have any kind of a screen protector on the Note Air 4C, but the difference between the two is not much at all. I think I can tell a little bit of a difference in this where I've got the screen protector on it. But when I pull this out of the frame and I'm only looking at this device, I don't perceive a difference at all. So from a glare standpoint, I really don't have any lights I could show you on here. I've been using this at work under the lights. It does help a little bit with the glare. I mentioned in a previous video that that was one of the my cons for it, is that sometimes I have to hold it just right because I have so many. I said fluorescent lights, but they're actually LED lights overhead, that the glare on this is pretty bad. It's reduced with the screen protector, so it is helping with that quite a bit. Okay, staying on the theme of the screen for the Tab XC, the next question had to do with, so if I'm using the screen protector, do I use haptics or do I not use haptics? The answer to the haptics question is absolutely not. I don't use that with a screen protector. It's not needed. The whole purpose of the haptics is to give you the impression that you do have some kind of a scratchy or a textured surface on the screen. Absolutely not needed with the screen protector. So the answer is no haptics. Somebody asked the question about palm rejection. How is the palm rejection on the Tab XC? So palm rejection on the Tab XC is like other Boox devices. It's very good. You're not going to get any kind of misinterpreted input, with the exception of one thing. So under your gestures, it's a little hand. It looks like a finger is pointing up like this. I know you can't really see it here, but under there you have several options. So you have tap to long press. I've got that turned on. I've got swipe to drag the page. I've got pinch to zoom, system bar gestures up here, bottom gestures up here, side gestures. When you have all that turned on, there is sometimes that when I lay my hand on the screen to write, that it will misinterpret that as a long press, which brings up the option to paste, add a text box, or add to outline. It just depends on the situation, but I always know that I can come into the gestures and turn that off. Sometimes if I'm at the top of the screen, it will bring down the menu here, and that can also be turned off with, let me get out of here, with the gestures. So the system bar gestures, I can turn that off, and it stops that from happening as well. So Boox is very customizable in the fact that you can make this thing work however you want it to work. If you like all those features turned on, great. I do leave them turned on. And when I have that system pop up or whatever, I just tap the screen with my stylus and get rid of it and move on. It doesn't happen that often. If it did, I would just turn that stuff off. But palm rejection is really good, but you got to mix that in with some of the features in the Notes app. There was a question of curiosity about, can you do continuous scrolling on the Tab XC? And the answer is complicated, so let me show you. So I guess we would need to define what is continuous scrolling. So when you think about other devices, for example, on the Remarkable Paper Pro, the Remarkable 2, you can scroll up and continue to see um, just it'll just continuously flow up in one long sheet. Uh, this device does not do that. When I'm actually scrolling, swiping down or swiping up, it's actually changing pages. So I'm on page 2 of 4, I'm on page 3 of 4, page 4 of 4. So that's no different than swiping left and right here. So it does not do continuous scrolling. It does have like an expanded canvas that you can do, and you can hit the margins icon here that I've got, and you can see this is the standard margins. You can expand your margins. Um, Quite a bit so that you've got kind of like an expanded canvas. It's not an infinite canvas. When I get back into this, there's my template. You can see it made my template really small. Um, and I can I can zoom in, I can zoom out, I can, play around in that canvas. But to me, I don't use this. I don't like this feature at all. Not a fan of it. I don't see any use for it. I guess if you wanted to, zoom in on something and write something really small, I guess it would help if I selected a pen. Write something small, you could zoom out on that, and I guess you could play around with it. I'm sure that there's uses for this. I don't find it valuable at all, but the answer to the question of continuous scrolling is no. Boox does not do that. And then I had somebody that asked a very specific question about sheet music and the ability to use it on the Tab XC. And are there any templates for sheet music available on the device? All right, so great question about sheet music. Are there any templates available for that? And just a general comment on the device. If you wanted to use this to be able to read sheet music while you're playing, and if you're in a concert or whatever, you need a device with a front light, and something big enough to be able to see, this would be a great device for that. But there are 3 templates that are available in here. The first one is called Stave 1. I'll show you what this looks like. You probably cannot see much here, but it looks like it's just it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different I don't even know what you call them areas where you could write your notes. I don't know anything about notes, so forgive my ignorance there. That's the first one. I don't know that there's any difference between stave 1 and stave 2, but I'll change to stave 2. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it looks like it's more compressed. You actually have 6 areas to write your music. And then there's a third one, and I'm going to have to find it here. I think it may be under study. It's called musical score. And so musical score, you see you got 4 different areas here. that you could put your music in as well. So hopefully that answers your question. You do have some templates to choose from. And also, I'm sure that there's plenty of PDF templates that are available that you could import as a native template on this as well. So a lot of questions came up here and on Reddit. You know, you hear stories of broken screens, and really the question came up of how fragile is the Tab XE, and for that matter, the Note Max and any other Boox device, because you do hear stories of broken screens. So let's dig into that a little bit. So the Boox devices are very solidly built. So, you know, to I guess put some stress tests on this thing. That is a very rigid device. There, you know, you're not gonna bend it. I guess you could break it in two. The vulnerability is probably the screen here. It does have a glass, you know, front. So, given that it's such a large surface, you know, if you had pressure in any particular one point, the centralized point, or any specific small area, you're probably going to cause some damage to the screen. But typically, if you keep it in a case, and you know, if you've got it in your backpack or your computer bag or briefcase or whatever the case may be, as long as you don't have anything that has any kind of a specific point of force against this, you know, if it's against a laptop and it's the flatness of a laptop against the flatness of the screen with nothing that's jabbing a specific part of the screen, you're going to be fine. If you don't lean back against something that's going to put pressure in a specific point of the screen, you're probably going to be fine. I think that the Boox devices are very well made. I think that they're very solidly made. When you look at these giant devices like a 13.3, you would expect it to be fragile. And I think that the folks that are experiencing, I guess, damages on this have very rare instances of what's happening there. I don't think that this is an issue at all. It's like anything else. If you were to have a million users of this device, and you have, you know, 1,000 people out of those million that have an issue, on the social media boards, you're going to hear from those 1,000. The remaining folks that are having no issues, you generally don't hear from because it's functioning and you don't have any, you know, thing to complain about, I guess you'd say. I'm not saying that it's wrong to complain about it. Obviously, when you have an issue, you want to be vocal about it if you feel like that's the right thing to do. But I don't think that there's any fragility issues with this at all. Then the final question about the Tab XE, I think a lot of people were hoping that it would be a Note Max just with color and a front light, and that was not the case. Had a couple of questions that I've seen that said, should we just wait and for Boox to release a Note Max C? So let's talk about that. So I think I've made my position pretty well clear as a user of the device, is that I think that this is a Note Max. This can be a Note Max C. It's not a Note Max C out of the box only because you don't have the writing feel. You don't have the Wacom EMR stylus support. So that's the thing that keeps it from being a Note Max C. With the screen protector that I talked about earlier, I feel as though I do have a Note Max C. So I'm a proponent of that. You know, maybe you don't use the screen protector that I'm promoting. It is a hack. It's a, you know, not designed for this device. It has rounded corners, and you can't see this on the camera, but it has rounded corners. It does fit absolute every piece of the screen where your pen would touch. But obviously it's made for an iPad Pro 13 inch, but the writing feel is absolutely superb. Um, and for me, this is a Note Max C. So just my opinion, I know it's going to vary. I know that there are purists out there that say, you know, that's not the way the device was designed. It shouldn't have a screen protector on it. You shouldn't have to add that extra layer. This is not a Note device. This is a tab device. I get all that. Hey, I'm a user. This is the way that I want to use it. Uh, Feel free to use it how you want to. For those of you that want that experience of a Note Max C, I think this answers that question for you and delivers that product for you. All right, so I hope you found these questions and answer sessions helpful. If you have any additional questions, I don't know if I'll make a video about them or not, but certainly if there's value in doing that, I will. But I do try to go into the comments and read everything that you say, and I try to answer. Sometimes I'm a little delayed in getting the answers in there. But if you have any other questions, please jump in there. I'll be glad to answer whatever you've got. And I'll give you my opinion. If you ask me what I think about something, I'll try not to waffle. I'll tell you what I would do if I were in your shoes. And I don't have any hesitation. I will just say, take my opinion with a grain of salt, and realize that if you make a decision based on my opinion, that hopefully your use case and your preferences align with mine, or you may be a little disappointed. But anyway, hope you found this helpful. If you will take a minute and like the video, if you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.